Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Are Someone Else with yourself, Kaz, the face of Property by Kazi. We've been away for a week or two, unfortunately, but we are back again. So if you're new or if you're not new, make sure you invite your friends, get them in, so we can make sure everyone can benefit from some great value today. Today I've got some guests on that I'm excited to have on. I met them in real life, and I thought I'd title this one Let's Talk Property Development, because today we're going to talk to some developers, not just property investors, but people that actually are actively developing assets. So let me see how I can get them on board. I'm going to send that request. As always, use the comment box to ask questions so we can make sure we can have a really nice, informative conversation. Hello.
Hi. Can you hear us?
I can indeed. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. I'm not too bad, thank you. I took a couple of weeks off doing these lives. As you know, I was waiting for you guys. I was really excited to get my last guests on for season 2. Took a little while. I think you had COVID, I had COVID, a lot of back and forth.
Lots of COVID, lots of just really, our schedules have been insane. So I'm surprised to be honest, if it wasn't for the live today, we wouldn't have been together today. So it's been a blessing in disguise.
We would have been.
Is that beneficial? Like, how have you found being a duo, being a team? Do you not feel like sometimes you need a third? Do you ever come to a point where you disagree and you need somebody to come and say, like, kind of, no?
We do disagree, but then as long as the other one has a reason to make the other one understand it, it's me more so probably that I ask about 100 questions as to why you've come to that conclusion. It's not a problem that's Jasmine's thought process, but I always need to know why. And so now she comes with her facts ready, and sometimes too ready. I'm like, all right, relax. I wasn't even going to ask you. Like,
so she just comes with all the objections already prepared.
She's like, let's go. I've got it. And sometimes I'm like, I wasn't even going to say anything. But okay.
I try. But no, we don't generally like. If we've got a difference of opinion, it ends up being okay. So like factually, what's better, or financially, what's better, or like business-wise, our value, what is actually. It might be our own opinion. So that kind of always ends up becoming. It's almost like our business is the third. The third decider.
So effectively, if you have a difference of opinion, you put the business first and try and sort of take that sort of ego out of it, rather than I just want it this way or somebody wants it that way. And just rely on what's financially makes sense.
The ego out of our business individually went real quick. Like it just disappeared real quick. I think if we had a little bit going in, I think that we were humbled super quickly by each other. So there was no ego left if there was any in the first place.
That's good. But Jasmine and Priya, so for those that don't know you, can we get a little introduction into who you are, what you do? I think that would be good.
You do it. She hates it.
Yeah, I do.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Jasmine, this is Priya. We've been investing together since 2018, but individually we've got about 15 years worth of experience in property. So we invest all across England. So we've got properties from like Middlesbrough, Leeds, all the way down to Plymouth. And we basically invest in different strategies in different areas. So we try to have multiple streams of income in regards to property, in regards to strategy. So we're a little bit different to the kind of norm. We basically cover all strategies minus rent to rent, and we don't do serviced accommodation. That's kind of us. We used to say we were under 30, but I'm now 31. So that does not work.
So you have to take that out of your bio quickly.
That's definitely.
We probably know we don't.
I don't know if that's even it. I don't know where it is, but we're no longer under 30. We're definitely.
I'm still there.
But yeah,
you're waiting. 30 plus is where the magic really happens. So you got all the enjoyment to come.
I'm just feeling old, if I'm honest. I'm needing an extra coffee a day, but it's what it is.
I did, because I remember like starting out in property and being young, and then when I was sort of doing, even when I was moving people into properties and things like that, and I'd check their ID and I'd see how much older than they were, and now I feel like I'm checking people in and I'm seeing how much younger than they are, and I'm like, 2000? Oh, yeah. My heart.
Yeah. It's too much. 90s babies.
Okay, so you said individually. What was your actual background individually in property?
Compra.
So I did a degree in economics. I worked in banking for 7 years, then got made redundant, and then began my property journey. Not really super interesting, but
I started investing when I was 19. So I went to uni. I bought going into my second year, I bought a house. I converted it into a HMO, lived in it. But this is like now sounding really old. This was the days where HMOs weren't really a thing. There were no regulations. There were no mortgages. It was just renting individual rooms to students. So I did that, and I kind of continued every couple of years doing something. Went full time into property in 2016, but I've been buying since 2009.
Okay. And so what were you doing between 2009 to sort of 2016? What type of properties were you investing, or what were you doing?
Mainly north, to be honest. Like a lot of my time went into it was mainly two areas, if I'm honest. So up until 2009, I was 19. I was still at uni, so I bought my one. I sat on it for a couple of years. It was in Hertfordshire, so it appreciated quite a lot. I took my money out, bought a property in Stoke. I then went into full-time employment. I was working in London, enjoyed it. I did the same. I kind of had a little bit of extra cash, put it into another property, and it was kind of just like at some point in life I'm going to need it, so I'm going to do it. It really wasn't my focus. So I was just buying student HMOs is what I was doing. And then I bought a few in Kent, which went on to social housing. And I was literally just, I literally just was traveling, working, and it was either social housing or it was student HMOs up north. It was more like
Uh,
laziness, to be honest.
but I think I guess, rather than if you didn't invest that money, it would have been very easy to sort of spend it as well. Because if we're not investing, it's so easy to just justify the expensive bag or the shoes because you've got the money there. Why do you keep looking?
We literally just have spent the day in Harrods, like no joke. Got to Harrods about like 1:30, and we just got back a little while ago. And if like, I mean, what bad timing. Um, yeah, can you just open it for me? Do you want me to do it?
yeah.
Okay, one sec. I'm going to leave Priya to the story.
What was the story?
Oh, in Harrods.
What were you doing in Harrods, and what did you buy for us? Because
We didn't.
we're all here now.
We just came home with a coffee and nothing else, and then went to Zara. So we just went out for a day out, having a look around, seeing what's around, and that's it really. But yeah, that's
Because it was effectively. But do you think the fact that you invest in property means that you find it more difficult to spend on, like more extravagant purchases because in the back of your mind, you're
We
thinking,
both tried on trainers, we both tried on shoes, we looked at bags, we looked at jewelry, and we came home with nothing because
Because I didn't have anything in my size, but if there was something in my size, my credit card would have been a whole lot lighter today. Should I say?
I think it is, but I think it's good that a lot of the time when I was looking at purchasing things, it's very easy to get. It's very easy to get caught up in the expense because you could literally spend your whole deposit on a day at Harrods, or you could think to myself,
It's a really interesting kind of thought process because when me and Priya buy something, like we don't spend ridiculous amounts of money, and there's also nothing wrong with buying yourself something nice. But for us, it's every time there's quite a big major win in our business, like it's all about okay, how do we celebrate? Like, what do you want? What do you need? Like, what have you like? We would buy like a property based on numbers, but if we're going to go spend, let's say, which nowadays is so easy, a couple of £1,000s on a bag, there's so much thought process that goes into it for us anyway. We're like, what do you think? How like, are we going to get use out of it? Where does it fit? The same kind of thought process goes into it. Like, is it like vintage? What is it like? But you go there and the people are just spending thousands and thousands of pounds on shit that, to be honest, in a couple of years, it's not really going to be anything.
yeah. I
Other
think
than
it's
something
funny
in the closet.
because some stuff, but at the same time, a lot of clothes are becoming like, if you buy the right clothes now with the right bag, they're almost becoming collectible. They're becoming investments in the same way,
But I always think it's better to purchase a piece of jewelry or a watch
It's not wrong.
than a bag or shoes because they
But
hold its
even
value.
But then even because a lot of people, have you heard a lot of people kind of comparing like when you see, particularly on the internet, because everybody's got an opinion about everything on the internet. Whenever you're talking about buying property, there'll be that person that comes up and says, well, I just bought this watch for X amount, and now it's worth whatever, it's doubled the value. But I think just like property, being able to do that comes from contacts and experience. Because if you're the person that can go into Rolex and buy a Rolex for retail, then you're going to walk out and make money. And then the same, if you're the person that has a great relationship with your local agent or with an auction house or with whoever, a sourcer, and they're going to find you a property that is worth more than what you're paying for it. I think it's the same principle, but a lot of it comes down to your connections and your experience.
100%. They say it's half of what you know and half is who you know. It's a strike of a balance between the two. I think there's no harm in ever. I think that everybody should treat themselves to whatever that treat might be, whatever makes you feel good, a holiday, piece of jewelry, a car, whatever it might be. But it's so important for you to strike a balance. Like if you're spending money on yourself or on something, you can buy something that doesn't really hold its value, but you love. But what have you done to put in the effort to reward yourself back with? Like there has to be a balance between some. There have been a number of years that me and Priya, we were actually speaking about today, like the work ethic is so real. Like you're constantly working and there's no time to go anywhere or do anything or enjoy it. Everything seems transactional. So there are days like this that no, we don't buy anything, but actually it was
spent £24 on coffee and cake.
We did. We really spent £24 on coffee and cake, which is really upsetting.
Was it a good cake?
It was a rubbish coffee. I still got mine because it was bad.
So okay, we're really not advertising the space very well, but it's a really shitty coffee. But the cake is super yummy. But it is one of those. It's a business expense anyway. Whatever.
Because I found, like, I used to not spend any money, like to the point that people thought I might be homeless because I was in the same tracksuit all the time, just on sites. And it was one of my friends that kind of was like, you have to sometimes you have to spend money. One, to, like I think you just touched on, to kind of enjoy the win of a deal that went well, to be like, okay, let me buy something for myself that's nice. So, I don't just straight away go on to the next one and get caught up in I'm constantly working, constantly doing stuff. You said if you got that nice bag that you think I got that bag off the back of some hard work I did, I think you'll appreciate it a lot more. And also sometimes you need the fear to be like, I need to go and get that money back now because that cost a lot.
That's exactly what we do.
That's Priya.
I'm like, if I'm going to spend this, how am I getting it back? Otherwise, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. She's definitely like that. So it's funny. Like actually, like we read this book. What is the one? Secrets of a Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker, and it's all about your money mindset. Like, how do you approach it? Like, what do you think? Like, what is your thought process of money? Are you like abundant? Are you quite fearful of? Like, it's quite interesting. And the same process when we do stuff. The same process applies to when we talk about like buying buildings or buying houses, like furniture. The same thing. How we approach our shopping trip to Harrods is basically how we both approach
basically just
furniture shopping. No, we did not. I enjoyed my day today. Thank you. Stop.
How do you two know each other? Like, what's your relationship? You just
I found you on the street.
I was a homeless person that didn't change her clothes. So Jasmine's other half is is my best friend, and when I got made redundant, he was like, why don't you just meet Jazzy, go for a coffee, see what she's doing and kind of what she's up to, because she'd started full-time in property, I think 1 year or 2 years before.
About a year and a half before.
Year and a half. So I was like, oh, not really, I'm not interested, like I'll figure it out myself. And then I got a bit lonely, so I was like, maybe might be quite nice. And then so we met up a few times, and then we took it from there, basically became shisha buddies. And then from that,
we've got a big shisha / property community going on at the moment. We realised, didn't we?
Yeah, so we've heard.
I've got a lounge at the back of my house, so
we don't actually have a proper lounge. We just named it a knockdown little. Anyway, yeah, and then we kind of both wanted to. In the first couple of months of when I started in property, bought a couple of HMOs and got bored quite quickly. So I knew that I wanted to focus on commercial, and Jasmine was looking at commercial separately from me. So we kind of brought it together, and then we just kind of started networking, teaching each other, and then it just organically kind of developed into business. Yeah, we never. I think I foreseed. Is that a word? No.
Foresaw. Yeah.
Foresaw this. Sorry, it's been a long day thinking Harrods all day.
You know what? She's saying that. This is just there on a general basis.
No, even just now I was having a conversation with my sister. I was like, I actually can't speak English today. Like, it's not working.
Okay, that's you every week.
So yeah, we just organically here we are.
Because the reason I ask is a lot of people, you know, even when like, I've been to very few, but at that networking event, a lot of people are kind of being alone in property can be quite a lonely space because there's a lot to learn and it's very daunting. But I think, you know, if you are looking for a partner, obviously, I think although you guys met each other, you know, through mutual acquaintance, like, well, not just a mutual acquaintance, a lot more than that to both of you. But you know, you found the value that each other add to you, and I think I can see like definitely a difference of personality where you've got different strengths and weaknesses that you sort of can play off each other. And I think that's really important if you are going to go into business with somebody, that it's not just a case of it's my friend. It's somebody that, look, where are your strengths and where are my strengths and how are we gonna.
But I could never work with them.
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody, right? Like, I guess, and
We have a very similar like work ethic. We
but
have
also
similar values.
we're very different when it comes to our work. Like today, we've mooched about whatever we've done. It's completely different as to if we were sitting opposite each other, trying to like figure out a deal or trying to figure out our next step. It's different, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's with everyone. We can have a laugh, we can have a joke, but we can also sit down and do work. And I think over time, that's what kind of evolves, and that's what you kind of gel towards.
Yeah, I definitely think like business, like we always get really worried when someone messages us on Instagram like, oh, we're gonna like go into business with my friend. I'm like, okay, other than both of you wanting to start a property journey, what else do you have in common? Like, what is your thought process towards money? Like, how much are you putting in? Where are your boundaries? Like, how do you both work? How much time are you putting into? What are your long-term goals? Like,
Also, effort.
Yeah, do they match?
Effort is a huge thing when you start into a business relationship with someone. If you're measuring your effort in one way and the other's measuring it in a completely different language, it's never going to work because you're always going to feel at a point where you're disadvantaged.
It's like being in a relationship. It's legit like being in a relationship.
Time together than
and like anybody else in our life. We speak to each other. Like some of our conversations super transactional. Some of them like they're kind of mixed between just kind of checking in and that business. But we do.
Before I got married, my husband was like, "Do you just want to go and speak to Jazzy again? Do you just want to call Jazzy again? Do you just want me to go and see Jazzy again?" I'm like, "All right, relax. She's not dating her. Like,
but it is
calm
like,
down."
It is like we have to kind of set time aside for friendship. But going into business with someone, there were a few things for me and Priya that I think both of us had done for each other without knowing that it had kind of reassured the other that it was a good business decision. And I think that people jumping into business with someone that just because they both want to happen to buy in, I don't know, in one area or want to buy an HMO.
Particularly if it's a long-term business, not just like, oh, it's a JV on an SPV to buy a property. But I think the stuff you sort of touched on in terms of accountability, like time, where do you see the business going, long-term goals, and effectively, I think a lot of that can be dealt with, like, you know, even if it's very formal, you don't have like the necessary like friend relationship at the beginning, potentially with like either an article of association which outlines what you expect both parties to do within a business, or even having like vested shares. So effectively, you both have to have your article of association would outline what you both have to do to earn your shares in that business. So it's not like person A could, you know, we both, okay, 50%, we set it up day one, maybe put a bit of money in, but then person A drives the business 100% and builds it, and person B is holding on. So I think definitely, as much as, you know, you can be friends, and it's great to work on trust, particularly when we're talking about property or any industry.
But it literally can mean nothing as well.
Yeah.
Or you can have all of those documents, you can do all of that, you know, whatever. But if it doesn't, if you two don't gel and you can't see a long-term future, it's never going to work. We have a lot of people saying, "Can you joint venture with us? Can you do this with us? Can you do that with us?" And some people just we can't work with. It's not a bad thing, but it's also we're not going to take their time. It's just as much as it's our time, it's their time, and we just have to say that, okay, we can put you in touch with someone else, but we're not the right people for you.
I think people are scared to get into property by themselves. I think it's a real big fear for a lot of people.
I think it's scary. Like, I think that's, you know, I wouldn't hide it, that getting into property, whether it doesn't matter if you're doing rent to rent, flips, BRRR, HMOs, there's a lot of regulations, a lot of money involved, there's a lot of mistakes that can be made, and that's not to put anybody off, but, you know, you need to understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah,
I think.
100%. But it's funny though, isn't it? Because someone jumps into property, like I might have just met Priya at a networking event and said, okay, I'm looking at buying HMOs in Liverpool. Oh, me too. Well, let's go for a coffee or let's do it together. But you might have been in a relationship with someone for 5 years and not even bought a house together because you don't want that commitment with them yet. Like there has to be a level of understanding. And I think people in the property industry, especially, are not having the harder conversations up front.
Mm.
They're expecting them to be had later on down the line where like you'll know with
At that point,
development,
it's too late.
it's too late. You're financially tied, like you're legally tied. It's also like with developments, a lot of people think a lot of the work happens during the build, but most of the bulk of the work is at the beginning because you can't, how are you supposed to plan anything? Or how are you supposed to make sure there's efficiency on site if you haven't planned everything at the beginning? Like everything has to be done. The bulk of the work is at the beginning. Then you kind of just make sure it's going to plan. And it should be the same in your business on who you choose to be in business with. Yeah, I think people say we're lucky, but I think that
We work hard.
we also had so many awkward conversations. Even this year, like we're moving office, etc. We've had to have conversations with each other, like, okay, where are you going to be in 3 years? Like, what are you planning on doing? Like, where do you see yourself living? Where do you see your life going? How do you want to be tied? These are awkward conversations to have with somebody.
I think we
Some of
had
the
this
answers we didn't even
conversation
know.
slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like, people say you're lucky, but by having those conversations, you put yourself in that position to be lucky because, you make it happen effectively. And I think that's what, a lot of successful people see that yes, people can be lucky, but you create your own luck by doing the hard work.
Yeah.
Agreed. But
But I
also, I
thought
think
I need to know more about what you've done because you spoke very holistically, very top level. So what of your first joint project? What was that?
so. Our first one that we did was a office building in Cradley Heath, if you're from
Cradley.
Birmingham. Well,
Mhm.
so we
Near Dudley.
Dudley. We bought
God
a
bless.
Dudley.
former
God bless.
council building and we turned it into 19 HMO rooms. The reason we did that was our first project is we used our own money purely to kind of prove that we can do commercial conversions and kind of that we had the contingency, the backup. It was kind of, we were also using each other's money for the first time. So we did a smaller project on a smaller scale and then kind of moved into a bigger development space after, which was then a project in Eastbourne.
So we sold the project in Cradley Heath.
Okay.
It was originally supposed to be basically bought and kind of kept for cash flow, but there was quite a good offer on the table by like a third party company to buy it. They offered like 3 times, so we made like 30% profit on cost. So basically, before furnishing, etc., they took it off our hands, and
That's nice.
it was kind of a money in, money out, money in for the next kind of project to go. It was kind of almost just a reassurance for what we were doing, and we also wanted to test the waters with each other to see how it would work, how it would logistically work, etc. So yeah, that was our kind of first project. We don't really have like a specific, we would only do this. Like we buy with planning, we buy like without planning, with permitted development, we
commercial and residential.
So we're not fussy, we're not like picky. But
You
we
As
just
long as the numbers are.
you follow the money.
we
No,
followed
we
it,
didn't
yeah,
follow.
100%. The money
Well-
follows us. It's not.
There's been so many deals there that kind of stacked on paper, but our gut just tells us no. So I wouldn't say we follow the money. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors that play into making the decision.
Yeah.
Money guides us, but it's not the be all and the end all.
Like for instance, there might be like
Okay.
25% profit on cost, and it would be okay for like getting finance, etc. But say if it's only making £100,000 and it's going to take like 2 years to do it, is it worth it? And it's say up north, but we're like, actually, it's not really the right deal for us.
We need to see time versus cost, where is the most efficient way to put our money in and
That-
And our
the
time.
return. Yeah. So it's not
That's- I think
following the money,
The money is definitely
a guiding
Yeah.
factor.
Well, what I mean, but is that I think that's what when a lot of people ask where should they do or what should they do, effectively what you're talking about is just percentages. So, based on your capital, what's your return based on what you're putting in? And I think a lot of people kind of miss that sometimes, that they'll look at £100,000, but if you could make £70,000 in 6 months rather than £100,000 over the course of 2 years, like you just touched on, it's a way better return on investment.
100%.
It's also depending, I think, a huge factor for us is time and what other opportunities lie on the table. There's been some great projects, and I got married last month and we were getting involved in a project and it just became A, too much with the wedding, and B, too much falling on Jasmine. The week of my wedding,
Oh, the agent pissed me off. We pulled out.
we just said no because
Yeah.
it was just too much going on, and certain things in your life you're never going to get back. So it's not always, like, as much as we're business partners, she's also my best friend. So if she wasn't present at my wedding, it wouldn't be my wedding, kind of thing. So you have to kind of,
Yeah.
it's pros and cons, right?
This year has been a big balancing act for us, but we like to take on a project as well that really challenges us. Like that also, like our second project together, it was all. When we completed, we also had a conversation with each other, like, what the hell? Like,
Did
how?
this just happen?
Like, we don't even actually understand. Like, we're nearly a year into this process, and only when we completed, we had the conversation of how much. Like, the build was over $1 million. Like, the purchase was just over like 1.118 million. Like, it was so much money. It was in an area we hadn't been in. It was but it should have basically been a grade 2 listed building, but it wasn't. But it was so old. We had never done a care home conversion. We had never worked in that. There was just so many. We had never built to sell units. And when we completed, I was like,
Did
I
we
know
just do this?
that the numbers worked. It was like only a couple of hours from the house. Like it was like looked like a really good fun project. But actually, when we stopped, we were like, what? Like, how did we get? Like, it's our favorite project today. But we really couldn't figure out like because the costings were just so much. Like we had bought properties for $1 million, but neither of us have ever done a £1 million build. Like it was just so
And
much
relative
money.
to our first project, it was
Real big jump up.
So how did you, what processes did you put in place, or what did you change to be able to actually deal with that and make sure that,
Our control
We-
freak,
yeah,
we control freak the shit out of this project.
so like, for example, because we didn't have a contract team in the area, we spoke to, I think it was
Went to
10, well, went to tender with 10 or I think we spoke to 14 and narrowed it down to 10 people that we interviewed for the tender process. Some didn't even want to get back with the tender pack, no problem, but like kind of the amount of research and diligence, even when it came to picking an agent, again, I think it was 9 we spoke to, narrowed it down again, and the research process was a lot lengthier than it would have been, if we were doing a project.
Like we completed in June, we did not start build until October. We could have started build had we picked the contractor, but because of like there was just so many. It was really, there were so many hoops to jump through for so many people. Like we'd never had a QS on site. We had never needed one. We were now dealing with a QS, which was an absolute pain in my head. In my life.
how did you find the QS? Because I've never actually used
through a
one.
recommendation, but we would not be recommending this QS. So,
But just, I guess the idea of having your QS though, do you think because of the size of the project, although maybe this one wasn't beneficial, did you see the benefit or?
I do see the benefit. For this project, it was not beneficial because it was the wrong person for our team. The fit kind of didn't work. He didn't work well with the other people that he should have been working well with, and he didn't work well with us. But the benefit of a QS, if they're at over £1 million project, is 100% beneficial. It also allows us to then continue to focus on finding new projects. That's what we're good at. We can manage our money. We can do all of that stuff. But it allows, if you have a QS, you kind of have more time available to move on, build your pipeline.
Yeah, and they deal with the bank.
And that's our focus. That's why we have an architect, a contract, like a project manager, these things in place, so we can focus on building the pipeline of through flow projects.
Yeah. But yeah, it was what it
sense.
was. There was a lot of learning with the project. It was really a lot of fun though, to be honest. Like,
And that was when did you start that?
Oh, I can't remember the year. I feel like I'm so old.
It would have 2019, beginning of 2019, February 1st, 2019. We got offer accepted. We completed in June, started works in end of October. Then COVID hit in March, so we were off site for about 6 weeks. They were off site. We also used, not like a big contractor, but he was a very well-known established contractor in the area. So he decided that he didn't want his guys on site. He continued to pay them, but for 6 weeks they were not on site when they didn't know what was going on. Then we had like everybody, we had issues with getting materials because it was 18 bathroom, was like not like there were just ridiculous amounts of doors, handles, all this, kitchens had not even been put in yet.
I think it was there was no multi-finish at that time as well, I think.
We had literally a 10,000 square foot building, and it only just started to be. It was ridiculous. So obviously that delayed us.
On one of our other sites, we built a storeroom because we
Yeah.
had to import them
I think
from Poland.
a lot of people were doing that. Just if you got a spare garage, just stockpiling sand, cement,
We didn't even have a
multi-finish,
garage. We took
bonding.
our part shed.
Yeah. That's what the contractors did in one of the sites in the Midlands. But it was
So
a
then
lot
that. So
of.
how long was the build overall for that one?
It was supposed to be a year. I think it ended up being about 14 months
Yeah.
total.
Okay, that's still not too bad
So
though, considering
yeah,
But
COVID
if
and
COVID hadn't hit, we were well ahead to finish in 10 months. That was at the start, kind of, progression every week.
there was
Kind
a
of.
lot of
yeah.
learnings on it. So the market kind of hit a bit different to how we expected. So we ended up wanting to hold the building rather than sell it. We're now in the middle of sales. We then
Okay.
decided to back onto the market. So it was a lot of chopping and changing with this one, and it's the amount of learnings that have come from it has been absolutely phenomenal. Like you just couldn't even. Do you know, like some people like theory learning, we're on the job like learners, like we just want to get out there, get, for want of a better word, get our hands dirty a little bit and just kind
Mm.
of understand what's going on. And I feel like if you're not in the process, you don't really know the right questions to
Yeah,
ask.
definitely. I
You
think
don't
because you're
really know
never going to
what
know
to ask.
everything, but having the experience that you've been there before, and be able to ask why, because a lot of people say, "Oh, like how did you know?" And so I didn't necessarily know what was wrong. Like I didn't know what was right, but I kind of knew that was wrong. And to understand why are you doing this, why are we not doing it like that, to be able to get a second opinion, being on site and being proactive is going to give you that exposure.
100%. We were on. There were obviously peaks and troughs. So we'd have to go minimum once a month, but we would go
Mm.
every 2 weeks. Like
Mm.
for sure, we were going every 2 weeks, and we were twice a week checking with our contractor what was going on. Like we'd have a WhatsApp group if it was something. We said that every decision had to be run past us. So a lot of developers are a little bit
I'm,
less hands on, but on this
I'm
one, we
sure they.
wanted everyone.
I'm sure your
They hated
contractor
it.
loved that.
No,
Yeah.
they got so used to it. They're like, okay, bye, call Jasmine and ask her
Yeah,
now.
because we would also say, since everyone called me, I'd be like, I'm not making a decision until I've spoken to Priya. So then if you've
Yeah,
called me, but we were very good on turnaround times. Like it was,
yeah.
if you give me a call, I'll call her straight, what we're doing. Okay, I need a day, or I can make the decision now, or whatever you think. Like we're always good at getting back because we know that the longer we take on a decision, it's only going to hold us up. But we were control freaks to like I know that they at one point we were like, we need to see this kind of workshop, we need to see this, we need to see that, like what about this, what about that, and he was looking at us like he's about to wring our neck,
I
but
think
it
like
looks great.
the two
It
things
doesn't matter.
you just mentioned there that like they almost sound like conflicting points, but I think they're both really important. Was one about obviously having, being sort of a lot of due diligence when it comes to attention to detail and being specific about what you want. But then also you touched on, initially it was your plan to sell the properties. You then said, you know what, let's rent them, and then decided to sell them, and actually being flexible as well. So as much as you need to have kind of that attention to detail, also being able to pivot and make changes based on market forces or changes in what's going on, I think is also really important to anybody sort of prospective developer.
Whenever we look at a deal, we have multiple exit strategies lined up ready because if we don't have them, we would feel like we're not protected, and we need to be able to kind of work with any situation, economic change, market change. So we kind of are prepared with, if it doesn't work for one and works for the other, we need to kind of manipulate, see where and how it could work, and then we'll kind of enter a deal. So that is really important for us.
A deal like this of this magnitude, to be honest, could have, if we didn't have multiple exits, could have bankrupted us because of how much money we would have owed and how much money would have been sunk into this building. It could have quite easily, one or two decisions wrong, we 100% would have been bankrupt. And it's one of those things that it's really important for you to kind of be aware of what are you doing. So we looked at it and we have to make sure we're both comfortable. So it's always, I think the good thing about having a business partner is, say if I'm sometimes trying to force a deal to work because I like it, Priya always
Yeah,
comes along with her like, no, you've gone way too high on this number, or we don't like this area, or we've said no, 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 vice versa. So there's always like an extra set of eyes looking through, being a little bit more thorough as to what's going on. And we always go with the thought process of, if we spend £1, are we getting £2 back on the back end of it?
yeah,
And if
yeah.
we're
Pound for
not, then
pound
it's just not
returns.
even worth the spend. Just kind of like as a rule of thumb, it's just easy when you're like picking stuff out.
Yeah.
But
I think
we're
it is
trying to.
it. it is good to have like, because a lot of people would say like, you know, how do you cost this and how do you do that? But you do kind of need a top level standard way of saying, okay, like you said, so whether it's, okay, I want to spend £1 and make £2, or whether it's something else. But if you have to over analyze every little detail, then it can become very sort of, you know, time consuming. So I think those sort of top level, just rule of
I
thumbs are
think your
quite good.
instinct is everything. I think your instinct is everything. Someone like if we came to your patch, I might not have as much of a good instinct on your patch. I might think like, oh, this might not work, and you know a way it's going to work because you're there all the time. Your instinct really counts for something in this industry, I think, for sure. So I think we always go by if it doesn't feel right. We even had it with agents. There were agents that were the best sellers in the area, and like they were the ones we should have gone with, but our gut instinct was actually they just talk the most amount of shit and they're irritating and we just can't even look, you know, like when they'd call you'd be like, oh, I actually cannot be asked to have a chat with you. So we were like, actually, if you're spending X amount of time on a project, it's important for you to be okay with who you work with and be happy to be working with them, because you're going to have to spend like so much time with these human beings. What if you hate them all? You're not going to enjoy going to work.
Yeah, you are gonna have to everyone all these mini relationships. It's important to actually be able to get along with people, like you said, with the builders, whether it's business partner, agents. But yeah, you have to actually have a relationship with them if you've got to do business with them. In terms of the industry as a whole, like being quite a, you know, two young women in quite a male dominated industry, how have you found that, and how have you kind of dealt with any issues or?
I think at the start, I really struggled with it because I wasn't the most confident, probably still not as confident as Jasmine is, as you can see. But
What do you
I,
mean? When you first met me, you looked at me and said, "I quite like you. I didn't think I would."
I didn't say that. She
That was
said that.
me. But she said, you house that I was looking at.
Yeah, that one.
That was her.
That one me.
Okay, well, so you both weren't sure if you were gonna lie with me, but yeah, one now anyway. I feel a lot of confidence. But yeah, so starting out, how did you
So yeah,
feel,
starting
or how
out,
did you do
I
it?
didn't feel like I had the most amount of confidence. I was always in a room full of men, wherever like networking event or kind of any like seminar or any kind of anything
Anywhere.
property related, it was always full of men. More so recently, I started to think actually, I think it's come over time, experience, and also starting my own projects and building like our project and starting different things and meeting different people. It really doesn't faze me anymore.
No.
It's not. I still obviously when we met on Tuesday, that was the first event we'd been to in a very very long time. I still did not want to go. I still said, can we go to Marrouche on the way and just go and get dinner and go home? And I still have to get used to it a little bit more, and I still have a long way to grow. But I think we've also come a long way, and it's not really a factor that we now think twice of. We're not phased by it.
It's not phase, it's more of a fuel now at this point. Like we would go onto like site, and even sometimes like you could tell people would be like, why are you here? Or like we've gone to events where like I've actually had a host of an event, like say, oh, with your attitude or with like your age, you're not going to get anywhere. Like you're not going to buy anything, or you won't get anywhere. And I just looked. I remember I turned around, I looked at him, I said, you don't even know who like what you're talking about, just because I'm not openly having a chat about. So pre-COVID, me and Priya were not on Instagram unless we had personally met. And we had personally had a relationship or a conversation or whatever, you would not know where me and Priya invest, what we invest in, how much we do, etc.
Even that we're in property.
Yeah, like it wasn't something we would openly have a conversation about. We would quietly go about our business. And people like this host of a property event were the people that fueled me more so than Priya, just to kind of set a tone that actually you can. I think females in property are a phenomenal thing where we pay attention to detail. We can juggle quite a lot of things at one time. We look at a little bit more of a personal touch naturally. We're a little bit more patient. There's no kind of bravado as much as there is with males as a generic kind of like stereotype. That's just not how it is. Like we don't go on site and kind of be like, I'm Billy Big Bollocks with the contractor. Like we listen, it's a little bit easier, and we try to kind of now like feel like actually it's a really good idea to like empower more females to get involved. But I tell you what, people like here were the reason that I wanted to come onto Instagram.
We've had so
That
many
pissed me off so
we've had
much.
so many like different things. I've been in a room and you kind of have to say, oh, if you're interested in this deal or you have an interest, raise your hand. So I raised my hand. One of the guys goes, I'm not interested in what you have to say. I said, okay. And then he said, and then it kind of said, you have to say how far you've come. I said, I'll put an offer in. He goes, what did you offer? I said, I thought you weren't interested in speaking to me.
Yeah.
Like now all of a sudden you
Yeah.
kind of you're interested. We've
Yeah.
had people come up to us at events and said one person openly cussed me to her face, and I turned around. I was like, I'm just gonna breathe and just like ignore this man because he's like 55 years old, coming for us. Doesn't
Mainly Priya. He was very rude, very like dismissive of her being in property, thinking she was basically in her head. And this is the kind of stuff. We've also had a commercial agent. Basically, we put an offer on. I think I can't remember what it was. I think
in
it was
Essex.
in Essex. It was
Chelmsford?
yeah, it was like 1.5 million for the building, and he was like, "I'm going to need your proof of funds before you put an offer in," which wasn't a case pre-COVID. It was never a thing. And
Which
then,
was also fine, but it was the attitude.
yeah, he gave mad
around
attitude.
it.
Yeah.
So I just dropped an email. Is it because I'm a girl? Is it because I'm young? Is it because I'm brown? I'm gonna need to know what your problem is. So then, like, we just was so
We
pissed
then
off.
withdrew from the deal.
And
In
sent
the
him-
withdrawal of the email, we sent him our proof of funds. Said,
Cash.
piss off.
And we won't be doing business with you ever again. And he was the owner. Like, this is the shit that fueled us. So I think as of recent, people, and I think because of social media, people are a lot more accepting of basically not a middle-aged white man in property. But I think pre-social media, and I think even 5 years
sure.
ago, it was much easier for a white male of like in his 50s, 60s to go in somewhere, be recognized for what he was doing. This is no longer what the industry looks like. The industry is a mix of ages, a mix of gender, a mix of ethnicities, a mix of strategies. You know, there's so many different people doing different things and being great in what they're doing. So I'm just glad that like myself and Priya can just kind of put out there that you don't have to be what you think you're supposed to be, because a bit fed up of like being the only female on site or females.
Nah, I think that's good. And I think like your stories like yours are going to inspire a lot more females to get into property. That's why I think as much as, you know, it might have been sort of coming out of a comfort zone a little bit to come onto Instagram and to tell people what you're doing because you know you're doing it. It's not just for you. Like you're doing it for other people as well, because you know what you're doing at the end of the day. You're still going to make money, Instagram or no Instagram, networking events or not. But I think for people that actually see, do you know what, there's somebody that looks like me, is not too far from my age, it makes it seem more accessible. So again, we thank you for joining and inspiring.
We've had some great like feedback from our Instagram, which kind of does make it all worthwhile. I think one guy sent us a message saying, I've got 2 daughters, and I hope one day that they can aspire to be, you know, successful as you guys in the property field. And you know, when you get a message like that, kind of all those posts, those stories,
All the time,
it kind of makes it feel really worthwhile.
You've been quite, I was checking your Instagram today, you've been quite consistently, particularly recently. I've been seeing the posts a lot of, and also I think a lot of the time it's important, maybe if you're between deals or just working on that pipeline, to actually just put out content in regards to your experiences. So I think for anybody who hasn't checked out their page, make sure you do, because there's loads of, like, the posts are not just a post of a picture. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of conversations as well, where you'll see other people that are in property.
We have this debate every time we write content in batches, right? So every time we go to write content, so I could write a post, I don't know, hypothetically speaking, on like tax relief or wills or something like that. No response. So then we thought, okay, let's change this up. Let's put a picture of our face with the same knowledge, the same kind of content, same kind of message. Let's change it up. As soon as we put our face there, everybody wants to talk to us. Everyone wants to engage. When we put a normal picture of site, no one's interested.
So crazy. It's so weird.
So now, are they following us?
Still.
No, so what I would say though is, obviously there's a balance, but what I would say is I found pretty much the same thing. Like I think I joined Instagram at the same time you guys did, like, so about just over a year ago, maybe a year and a bit, maximum year, between a year and a half anyway. And it was like, okay, I had the same thing. Like I had a close friend of mine, I think wife's family, and for ages they kept telling her they didn't believe that I wasn't doing something illegal, because all they ever saw me was not going to work in a tracksuit. And I was kind of like, look, I kind of need to tell people what I actually do, or they're just, no one's going to have any concept. But then what you'll find is, if you start with just pictures, the engagement wasn't that high. But when you put a face to it, it's that same conversation of, okay, there's actually people that maybe look like me or are closer to my age or talk like me that are actually doing things. So people, whether or not I am Property by Kazi or you're the hard hat developers, people aren't going to resonate and buy into those brands straight away. They buy into the two of you. So I think that's why you probably find that increased engagement. But definitely,
people can engage with you more the more you give them of yourself, which we find quite difficult. Even the other day, I was speaking to a lady. She's not in property. She's growing her Instagram business presence, and she's done it phenomenally. Like, I have to give it to her. So I was talking to her, like, kind of, I'm very interested in business and how business works more so than property. So I was explaining her business model. She was explaining it to me and how she's used social media to her advantage. And she goes, Priya, all you need to do is put your face out there. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? She's like, you just put your private life. The minute you put your private life, everyone becomes interested. And
it's a balance. It's a balance, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but also there's some things in my life that don't need to be on social media, and people as well. We
just try to be real, though.
So,
that's what it was. Like, if we have an experience, like, for instance, you asked us, like, how is to be a female in the industry? We always try to be honest. It's a little bit of we aren't like polished. We aren't.
Can't speak English some days.
Yeah, most days. We're not scripted. Like, we're very just like ourselves, and we try to kind of be the same wherever we are, because I just think if you're going to run a business and have all of the headache of running a business, because people think it's easy. People think, oh, you can switch off when you want, and you can go on holiday when you want, and you can do whatever you... It's not. It's so difficult. You're more switched on when you have a business than you are if you work for somebody else, in my opinion. So if I have to take on all of the headache of that, then the benefit should be I get to be myself no matter where I am. Unapologetic. If I want to wear a hoodie, I should be able to wear one. Doesn't matter where I am. If I want to be a little bit kind of not be politically correct or be like have corporate language, then I should be able to be that way, and that should be a benefit of running my business, because we are our business and that's who we are. So we really wanted to kind of make sure that people get into the property industry knowing all of the pitfalls that go along with it, because it's not easy.
And just be real, because
it's not easy every day.
When we were starting our Instagram and our social media, we looked at a lot of property accounts and kind of, did our market research to understand how we want to position ourselves and what we want to say. And I felt all of them give you all the highs. I made X amount in this amount of times, or I got this and did that. And it's actually not true.
Yeah.
The reality is that at 10 o'clock at night, our solicitor can call. We can be doing something. We need to take the call. At 6 o'clock in the morning, we're actually figuring some other shit out.
Or on a Sunday that you've had your whole fucking refurb done, and then 4 days after the refurb, there's a whole leak, and you're basically on a Sunday with a plumber, electrician, like you've got like these hoovers vacuuming all the water up. It's ruined your whole refurb that you've been doing for no one tells you that side of it. Like,
I think a lot more people are starting to, but we didn't find that position wasn't as real as it was then, and that's what we try to kind of portray, that it is hard work. It doesn't happen overnight, and you might be your own boss and you might get all these finer things in life, but it's not easy.
It comes at cost.
Yeah, sure.
Mental health. We said that we're not business owners. We were like, at one point you were like just like firefighters. Like sometimes your phone rings and all you're doing is like, you're literally just like, what is that game? You know, like where it pops up, that mole thing pops up, and you're literally just
whack-a-mole.
You're just trying to figure it out. It's literally just one problem-solving issue at a time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think that's good, but that's how.
No, definitely it can be like that, especially as we're trying to grow, because I guess what we're trying to do in properties, we're always trying to go bigger and better. If you stay within your comfort zone, you can get to a point where you can have processes in place and stuff starts to look after itself, and maybe you work with a team that can do the same thing over and over again. But if you want to grow and come out of your comfort zone, and you want to go from making tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions and beyond, then I think it's always going to be like that, because great things don't happen when you're comfortable. Which I'm just great at this. I'm going to be a host. This segue is amazing. So what's next? What's your next, like, where do we go from here? What are your next projects? Where do you see yourself in the future?
So we're working on a project at the moment, which we're waiting. on,
We're going through planning.
yeah, so we're kind of waiting, which we're keeping under wraps until it's one of them like the superstition, like just keep your mouth shut until it actually comes through, because God,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
it doesn't come through, right donut. So this project for us, we've got a couple of ways we can either build it out or sell it on with planning. But if we build it, it will be the biggest project we've done to date, and it will be like life changing for us. So a lot of our time and effort has gone kind of on that. We're currently like kind of finishing off the other projects.
Yeah, we've got two coming to an end at the end of this month. So, well, actually, I want to say the end of September because this month finishes tomorrow. Tomorrow, is it?
No,
whatever.
Tuesday.
Same thing.
Tuesday.
So the pressure is on for us.
Got
In the next few weeks.
two buildings going through sales as well.
Yeah. We're also doing smaller projects alongside to keep our cash flow going, because they're little smaller HMOs, 5-6 beds, and the next.
It was a big personal year for us. So we kind of decided very early on in the year that we would probably be tying up a lot of our loose ends and be enjoying a little bit more family time. Just like obviously Priya's getting married, we've had a lot of kind of Priya got married, my bad. I wasn't.
No, I cannot get married again, please.
I actually, if Priya gets married again, I could not cope. Like I really couldn't. I'd leave. I'd
do.
I'd leave. It's too much. We're like just kind of start like moving houses. Like we're both moving areas, etc. in our lives. So it's just a lot of kind of personal stuff for us. But
also after last year, we're just kind of taking it a bit slower, enjoying.
I remember I saw your infrared with Alfred. I think, or a live with Alfred, where you were just talking about sort of like consolidation during lockdown in particular as well. Which I think is
also last year was a tough year for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And if it's taught us anything, it's to kind of be in the moment and enjoy things a little bit more.
We're just grateful to be honest, like so many businesses went under last year. I think, I mean, like we are about consolidating, so we're trying to not be leveraged. I know that a lot of people that have been on trainings, etc., talk to like leverage, but I think it gets to a point in your business that leverage is not the best thing about your business. Like you need to have some sort of equity in it, you need to have some sort of stability in it. And I think that we're at a part that actually where we are kind of getting to a different stage of our lives, we need to have some sort of stability. We don't really want to be dealing with finance company. Like for us, the worst thing about property is probably the financing side of it, like mortgages, like development finance. They all annoy me. Like I've only found one lender that is nice. The rest of them, I just couldn't.
I see why you get along with Ted, by the way. You like to get frustrated by people quite easily. Just, they annoy me. They annoy me. The agents annoy me. The QS annoyed me.
You should have seen us last week. Last week we had a week from hell. So we sold a property, and the solicitor sent the funds to the wrong account and then blamed me for completing the sale proceeds, whatever bullshit form that is called, incorrectly. I lost my absolute shit. And on my task today is I stayed quiet. We got the money, stayed quiet. My task this evening is to write an email to her boss, annihilating her. Because this is not okay.
I mean, you can't send that like a lot. Like it was a lot of money to be sent into the middle of bloody nowhere.
So luckily, she sent it to the wrong account. So it was in limbo, in Barclays limbo, as in like, when they have to return the funds.
Yeah. So
then I sat in the bank for 4 hours in the morning, on a Monday morning. I literally cried to one of the people in the bank because they weren't talking. They're like, we have no business managers here. There's all the business bankers now. They work from home.
It's centralized in Birmingham.
This is not okay. Like, I am super stressed out. Where is my money?
Like, see what happens though. If one of us is annoyed, the other one is like the calm one. When the other one is venting,
I'm fuming even thinking about this woman on the phone.
The other one brings like calm. So we're able to kind of like. There's never really a point where both of us are irritated. Like we'll have a conversation of like, okay, are you taking this one or am I going to?
But I took 10 minutes. I was like, let me actually go through my emails and see if I messed up. Because if I messed up, cool, I'll figure it out. But now when I'm figuring out someone else's mess, it's a whole different game.
It is. That is, to be fair though, that is a lot of property is figuring out in other people's mess. Like whether it's on site or whether it's whatever that is.
My worst part, I called her, I said, I am sick of doing other people's jobs. How thick are people?
That's the frustration, isn't it? But like So like we all have our own kind of like when we self-funded a project, it just makes life so much easier. Like you can, I think my frustration with this industry at the moment is one, how slow everything is. Like it's so slow. Like it's ridiculously slow. We should have evolved in life. Like when we went for a refinance, Land Registry hadn't even updated the titles to have us on it, so our new finance couldn't take over until we were on Land Registry. Like, what's happening? Why is this taking
Got like a 3 month delay.
like
It's
everything.
ridiculous. So this kind of stuff I feel like is very frustrating. And then the second thing for me is I don't think the finance side of this industry has caught up with the creativity of a lot of the developers and our creativity in terms of how we look at a deal and how we structure it and how the numbers are done. I think that you kind of need somebody to come in at the level of what kind of like high street funding is giving you at like let's say 8%, but not kind of be charging like basically like when they're charging like 30-40% like on mezz finance for you to be creative. I think there's a gap in the market for finance. And I think that for us is the frustrating thing, because I don't want to be wasting 6 months of my life going through financial hoops and paying lawyers for watching me sign a personal guarantee, which I signed last week for someone else with the same time, and paying you like £250 a time. It's ridiculous. Like this is the kind of stuff that frustrates me. I'd rather give it to somewhere else. So I think that for us, probably the next couple of years is to just self-finance or private fund all of our deals.
Yeah.
Because I'm just overpaying banks like tens and 20,000s legals. I'm over it.
I think that's a very interesting. I think I might bring someone on from finance in the near future to discuss that. 'Cause I think definitely that there is a lot of creative deals and a lot of creative developers, and I think not just on finance, but like you mentioned, from charges and updating land registries and various other things, that there's so many delays that stop something that technically could be really smooth, and then you get to these bottleneck points where it's sort of computer said no. So I think, but I don't want to take up any more of your Sunday. I don't want you to be moody at me. You do like being moody at something. So I don't want to get told off.
We're just going to be having a sheesh after this, to be honest. We'll have a sheesh and we'll moan about you after ourselves.
No. Firstly, we're going to do our official, because I don't like networking events, but I do like the idea of just a property shisha link up. So we're going to get our shisha gang in. I know there's a few of them we've discussed. Can see Alfred in the building. I can always see Alfred late night after his builder stressing him out of a shisha in his living room. So we'll get him involved with a few other people that we've met. But really appreciate you guys coming on today. I think it's been a lot of value for everybody that's been in here, everyone that's joined the live. It is going to be available on the YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Yeah, I did. So why did you not look at me? You always look at her like, hey, what did you get me into?
Yeah, she's like, do you know what she said to me today? This is the last live that I'm doing. I was like, no.
I hate lives. But to be honest, this one's actually been okay. Because normally they're really bad quality. And
Has this been your favourite?
Yeah, because before, normally, I don't mind doing them.
I had Alfred's in here, by the way, and you did his live and just say, this is my favourite. So,
because usually...
She's got favourites, it's okay. She's allowed a favourite.
Usually it's always really bad and we get distorted and it's just carnage. I'm like, this is wasting my time. But this has been fine.
Basically, even shopping with me and Harry's is wasted her time. She basically, I don't know what is not a waste of her time.
I hate wasting time, by the way. Like this.
All right, we're good.
It's available on YouTube. That's what you were saying.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. This is the end of season 2. So last episode, they'll probably go live in a couple of weeks. And then we're going to have season 3. So if there is anybody else that you want to see me have on, we've got loads of good guests booked in for the next season already. If anybody else that you want to see me have on, drop me a message and we'll see if we can get involved. Thank you everyone for logging in. Thank you for being a part of this, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.